Hello everyone, welcome back to another session of CaN, Gallant Current Affairs and News Analysis. So in this video, we will be discussing the current affairs, the important current affairs from the Hindu, the Indian Express or the PIB of the last 10 days from 20th of November to 30th of November. So this will be a compilation of the last important topics of the November. So from polity, I have taken three important topics such as the special category status, national defense, a disaster responsible based upon the Uttarakashi incident. This body becomes very important, as well as the All India Judicial Service. The President has been stating about creating an All India Judicial Service. So how is this created? Why is there an All India Judicial Service needed? What is the procedures and everything we will be discussing in this polity session. Then from the reports, we have the World Energy Employment Report, OECD report on climate change, emission gap report, World Economic Outlook, broken records, as well as the ILO reports. So all these reports becomes important as well. Then from the defense, we have the Special Protection Group, Special Task Force, as well as the exercise Vajra Prahar. And from international relations, I have taken two very important crucial topics, the India-Australia relationships as well as the RCEP. I also thought that taking about COP28, but I believe that I could take everything cumulatively in the next session that will be coming. So I will be taking detail about the COP28. Next, from the economic session, we have talked about IBC, GAIL, dollarization, as well as the importantly 16th Finance Commission will be actually recommended again. Then from the awards, we have the JCB Award Prize, Indira Gandhi Peace Prize, as well as the Booker Prize. Arts and culture, we have an important personality we need to discuss about. Then Kolkali as well as Kambala, folk art and other traditions associated. Then from environment, we have poppy cultivation, what is mud plat, Onatukara sesame seeds. Then we have the chimeras, Lantana camera, that is actually invasive species. Then we have the biogas blending as well as the rat hole concept of rat hole mining. Then from science and tech, we have the important topics about what measles and progress of elimination towards the measles, chicken pox, Langdon's program, the Sati potent, tantalum, what is that material. Then we have the turmeric wood, generic drug as well as the Artemis Accord. So these two slides both are the headings of the important topics that we will actually cover today. So from the first polity session, we will be dealing about the special category status. Consider the following statements. We have Uttarakhand, Telangana, Bihar, Assam as well as Himachal Pradesh. How many of the above states have the special category status? Now you might get confused with what is the special category status as well as what is the special status. There are two such things which we need to discuss about. So let us see what is the special category status as well as the special statuses. So this is the special category status, that is the SCS. Then we have the special status. So if you see here, we have the special status in our constitution, which is actually mentioned under Article 371. We have special status given to Kashmir, 370, as well as for many other states in the northeast India as well as Goa, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. So all these states comes under special category, special status that is actually mentioned in the constitution under Article 371. You might find this Article 371A, 371B. We know that Article 371A deals with Nagaland. We discussed in our last class. So certain special category status comes under the constitution. Now this, from the constitution, you have to know that this is actually, if you need to include a particular state into this special status, you need to amend the constitution under Article 368. There needs a 2/3 of majority from both the houses to include, as well as the signature of the president, as in from the president, so that you can actually add a particular state to the special category status. Now the special category status mostly gives legislative powers. It deals with the legislative powers of the states. So that is what is basically special status is called about. Then we have a special category status. Now the special category status is not mentioned in the constitution. It is actually given by the National Development Council. To include a particular state in this special category status, a resolution should be passed by the state legislative assembly. Then this particular body will consider if that state has to be added on the special category status. So a resolution should be passed by the state legislative assembly. So Bihar in this case have actually So in order to give a resolution, it should be passed by the state legislative assembly, and then this resolution will be looked up by the National Development Council as such. Now in the special status we saw that it gives legislative powers. Now from the special category status it gives economic and financial powers. If a particular state is not financially good, they are financially weak, and they have a hilly terrain or something, and they are also close to the international boundary line as well. So pertinent state, there are some categories under which a state could be given a special category status. If the state undergoes all the sections, then that particular state will be actually awarded special category status. Now this is not mentioned in the constitution, as I have told you. Now this was actually this was recommended by the 4th Finance Commission. This is also known as the Gargill formula. This is also known as the Gargill formula, and this particular special category status was actually recommended by the Gargill formula. But the 15th Finance Commission has stated that such Gargill formula should be stopped, and such special category status to be given to particular state should be also stopped. So since about 2001 we don't have any other states being mentioned as a special category status as such. Now as of now only there are 11 states which is actually mentioned on this special category status. So you need to know the difference between what is a special category status as well as what is a special status. Both could be, the development process can be actually interchanged and asked you people as well. They might ask you what is special category status but give the provisions of the special status. So you need to know. Now this particular differentiation is not provided in our Lakshmikant and all. So it's important that you learn the difference between them. So moving on to the main context, as I have told you, Bihar Legislative Assembly has actually passed a resolution stating that they need the special category status because they are very weak, and recent Bihar caste survey also states that the number of population of poor or people under poverty is high. Close to about 96 lakh people are undergoing poverty in Bihar. So the special category status is important so that they get the financial as well as the economic benefit, so that the state can actually rise up as well. So you see here the special category status, as I have told you, is actually given by the National Development Council. Now that is awarded to certain states facing geographical and socio-economic challenges. There are special criteria which they need to actually undergo so that they can be accepted under the special category status. They should be along the international border. They should have a hilly terrain. They have a significant of tribal population. Also, they are experiencing economic backwardship. So these are some of the criteria that Bihar has to actually follow so that they might get the special category status. But I have told you, by the 15th Finance Commission, this special category status has been actually stopped. Not 15th, I'm sorry, it's 14th Finance Commission. The Gadgil formula based grants were actually discontinued. I made a small error. It's actually 14th Finance Commission and not 15th Finance Commission. So they have actually stopped this. They have actually recommended a stopping of the grants based upon the Gadgil formula. So moving on, if we are actually looking about the difference between the special category status as well as the special status, as I have told you. The special status is actually mentioned in our constitution and has been passed by 2/3 of the majority of the both houses of the parliament, and special category status is actually granted by the National Development Council. Special status, legislative and political rights is given, whereas special category status gives economic, administrative and financial aspect. Now if you are seeing, these are the states which have actually been granted. We have Assam, Nagaland, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Manipur, Meghalaya, Sikkim and Tripura. We have almost all the northeastern states. We have Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram and then Uttarakhand. So the non-northeastern state, we have the Jammu and Kashmir. Then we have Himachal Pradesh. Then we have Uttarakhand. all the other states actually comes from the northeastern region. So these are the states not from northeast as well as the North India, including Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, which has the special category status. Now these are some states which actually request. Apart from Bihar, the other states which actually ask for this SCS status is Andhra Pradesh, Goa, Odisha and Rajasthan. So they have not actually received any such. The last state which was actually given a special category status was Uttarakhand in 2001. After that, no states were actually granted the special category status as of yet. So from the special status as per the mention in the constitution as well, from article 371, certain states were actually given the special category status. If you can see here, the state of Gujarat, Nagaland, Assam, Manipur, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, then Sikkim, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Goa, Karnataka. So these are the states which are actually mentioned under the article 371 of the constitution that gives a special status to these states. So know which all the states that come under special category status and which comes under special status. Since this news has been there in the newspaper for a long period of time and there is a long debate going on this to give Bihar the special category status or not. So this topic actually becomes very important for our prelims preparation as well. So if you are going back to the question, if you are actually seeing which of the following states comes under the special category status, then there is Uttarakhand, Telangana is not there, Bihar not granted, there is Assam and Himachal Pradesh. So only 3 pairs are correct here. So only these particular 3 states actually come under the special category status. So moving on to the next question, we have the National Disaster Response Force. The National Disaster Response Force was formed for the first time through the National Disaster Management Act. The NDRF is chaired by the Prime Minister. It is tasked with responding to natural as well as man-made disaster. Based upon the National Disaster Response Force, if you are going through the elimination method, this statement is particularly much easy. Like it responds to natural and man-made disaster. There is nothing wrong to point out in that. This particular statement is correct. The NDRF was actually formed after the Disaster Management Act of 2005. We had the 2004 tsunamis, after which the disaster management was taken much more seriously, and this National Disaster Response Force was actually created under this 2005 Act. So the first statement is also correct here. But the important is the NDRF chaired by the Prime Minister. See here, Prime Minister is indeed the chairman of the National Disaster Response Force. It is tasked with responding to natural as well as the man-made disaster. Now they have created a lot of battalions. Presently there are 16 battalions which consist of about thousands of personnels who are trained in various fields to give early warnings, and then for tsunamis, for floods, for avalanches, there are various rescue teams or various battalions which is tasked with the equipping with a specialized team for various type of disasters as well. There is also a quick response team which acts like 24/7 to ensure the immediate response as well. So that is the National Disaster Response Force. With the Uttarakanshi tunnel incident, as we know, all the 41 workers has been rescued by now. So with that, this becomes very important. So from there, we have to choose number of incorrect statement. We have all the statements which are actually correct here. Moving on to a last, based upon the All India Judicial Service. So basically I didn't give a question on that, but we need to discuss what is the All India Judicial Services. Now presently the judges, now in the upper judges of the High Court as well as the Supreme Court, they are appointed, transferred, everything is done based upon the collegium system. But for the lower, subordinate, for the subordinate courts which work under East states, there is no particular selection process based upon the collegium, but they go through via the PSC exams and other state exams as well. And then the judges are actually appointed by the governor at the state level. But the problem is that if you are going via PSC and such, there is a lot of corruption, there is a delay, and there is a lot of vacancy happening along with it. There is no centralized system for the selection of judges in the state level as such. Because of it, there is a lot of pendency of lot of vacancy that is happening here. And through this PSC exam and all, we know it's not actually regular as well. Sometimes the exam is not there. Even if the exam is there, there is actually a lot of political tussle happening within the PSC. There's a lot of corruption, and the particular force is not centralized, and each state has different procedure for conducting the exams, especially in the case of PSC and such. The date will be different, the appointment process will be different. So because of which the subordinate courts, there is no particular category of which there is actually appointment for the judges in the subordinate courts. Now this All India Judicial Service has been recommended for a long time by the different purpose. Like, this is not a particular new idea, this has been there for a long time. Different law commission has actually recommended for the appointment for the establishment of an All India Judicial Service as well. But for a long time there has been a lot of backlogs and there is a lot of decisions being made too, but nothing is being implemented as well. So recently our President Draupadi Murmu also stated that the importance of creating an All India Judicial Service. To create a particular All India Judicial Service, we need to amend Article 312. As per the earlier resolution made by the Rajya Sabha, could actually create an All India service body. Now presently we have 3 All India service. We know there is IAS, IPS as well as an Indian Forest Service, which 3 are coming under the All India Judicial Service. Now they are looking to create an All India Judicial Service for the All India Judicial Service as well. For that, a resolution should be passed by the Rajya Sabha under Article 312. So if you are actually looking here, Article 312 of the Constitution provides for the establishment of All India Judicial Services. So that this includes for post it includes for a post from district judge onwards, not for any post inferior to district judge. That should be actually very clear to you. Okay, not include any post that is actually inferior to the district judge. This includes posts from district judge onwards, so that the subordinate judges also has an opportunity to go beyond the subordinate court system and come into the higher courts as well as the Supreme Courts as well. The government also view a properly framed All India Judicial Service is also very important, and because of this, a comprehensive proposal was also formulated by the Constitution for the constitution of an All India Judicial Service but it has not been implemented yet. So in 2012, but it's not implemented yet as well. Now this is actually will create a merit system which will address the issues of social inclusion. Now basically the thing is that you are discarding all the state exams and going via the UPSC method. You know how centralized the UPSC is and how correct it is in the appointment as well. So if you are actually bringing this judicial system underneath the UPSC system, it will be actually much more flexible. There is a lack of corruption. There is a chance for the district judges to go beyond the subordinate courts to entry into High Court as well as the Supreme Court as well. So that is basically what is mentioned here. Then the All India Judicial Service is a push to reform or centralize the recruitment of judges at the level of additional district judges and district judges for all states, just like UPSC, our civil service examination as well. This was first proposed in the 14th report of the Law Commission in 1958. This was again proposed in the Law Commission report of 1978. In 2006, the Parliament also Standing Committee on Personal Public Grievance also stated that a pan-Indian judicial service is also required. So it's not a very new idea, this has been there, but there is a lack of implementation or there is no particular policies that are actually coming to create this All India Judicial Service as well. So that is it from the polity session. Then we will be actually moving on to our international relations. India has signed the free trade agreement with which are the following countries? We have Sri Lanka, Nepal, Philippines, UK, Thailand. We need to choose the countries of which India has signed our FTAs with. So if you are looking, this is the model for our order in which we actually go. Now this is known as the preferential trade agreement. Now this is the base of the trade agreements that is actually present here. If you are looking at the preferential trade agreement, this consists of some positive list. Now this is a kind of initial trade that happens between a few one or two countries or more than 2 countries as well. Now there is only a list of products that is mentioned under the PTA. For only these goods, there is some kind of preferential trade happening. That is called as a positive list. This positive list consists of only certain goods. Maybe there is coconut or there is actually transfer of medicine. So these are only the particular item that comes under this positive list, and the trading comes between any kind of duty. There is zero duty or something will happen between these few goods only. Now that is mentioned under the positive list that is given out by the PTA, that is the preferential trade agreement. Then we have the FTA. It consists of a negative list. Now the particular things which are actually mentioned in the negative list will not be in the trade regime. All the products, all the else will be there which will given zero duty or any tax benefits as such, but certain important goods that is actually mentioned in the negative list will not be included under the FTA, and the normal trade will happen in that, whereas for the other goods there will be actually the FTA will be allotted, because of which there will be zero tax, zero duties as well. Then on moving that, we have the agreement on cooperation agreement. So that is the CAC. Along with it, we have the SEPA as well. That is a partnership agreement. That's a partnership agreement as well as a cooperation agreement. Now the CAC agreement focus on the trade tariff and trade tariff quota, rate quotas and all, whereas the CPA is much more greater than the CCA. It has a wider, more comprehensive and wider range of economic things will be actually covered into it. Then we have a custom union, then we have a custom market, and then will be economic market. A custom union where a lot of countries actually come together to form a particular union, and they will have policies and trade between that countries. Then we have a common market where there is a movement of labor as well as good from one country to another without any kind of interference. We can see the economic European Union common market system, where all the people actually labor as well as the goods actually move from one country to another within the European system. That forms a common market. Then there is a economic market where all the countries are coming together. They might have the same policies, political family, same currencies, like some countries adopt euro as well. So particularly that is actually called an economic market, that is still applicable to economic union also. That is our European Union also. So this is the height by which different trade agreements take place. We have the PTA, we have the FTA, we have the CECA, we have the custom union, common market as well as the economic market system. Okay, so that is the basic ideology of the region economic integration initiative that are actually present here. So if you are looking examples for the provincial trade agreements, like we have the Asia Pacific Trade Agreement, we have the India Afghanistan, India Chile, as well as the India Mercosur PTA agreement. This Mercosur is actually in the South American region, where a particular 3 to 4 countries have come together to form the Mercosur. So these are some of the PTA agreements we can actually find. Now we have the FTAs. We have FTAs with Nepal, Bhutan, Thailand. We have the agreements with the South Asian Free Trade Agreement, that is SAFTA agreement is there. We have with Thailand, Bhutan, we have with India, Singapore, CECA, that's a Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. We have the India ASEAN, we have the India South Korea, with Japan, Malaysia, Mauritius, UAE, as well as the India Australia ECTA. Now we are actually moving ahead with the ECTA. That is the news is that India is going beyond into this economic cooperation and trade agreement was actually signed in 2002 and now 2022, and now we are actually upgrading it to CECA. So that is what there has been actually in news. So these are the countries which has a free trade agreement CECA with India as such. It's important that you learn certain countries which has trade agreements so that you can actually eliminate certain which we doesn't have. We have, as I have told you, we have Sri Lanka, Nepal, not Philippines, UK we are actually talking about, and then Thailand. So here only 3 countries are the countries which have signed FTAs with India. Moving on, we have the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Now, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership is actually a free trade area consisting of ASEAN members and 5 regional dialogue partners. It is a China-led initiative for regional trading bloc, and India is a part of this initiative. We need to choose a number of correct answers from this. So, let us first look into what is a Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership as such. So, this RCEP actually consists of 10 members, the 10 ASEAN members as well as the 5 regional dialogue members such as China, Japan, South Korea, Australia as well as New Zealand. But India is actually not a part of the RCEP. It gives a preferential trade agreement between all these countries, and the ASEAN has been actually asking India to come and join this RCEP. But India is not willing to join the RCEP because of all the trade blocks and agreements that may actually emerge. Now there will be a dumping of the goods in India from the third countries as well. The goods may be enrolled from China, then go to the ASEAN countries and then come to India. From third country there will be dumping in India, which will affect our manufacturing sector, agriculture sector goods and such. So because of which India is not presently willing to join the RCEP as such. So first statement is actually correct, but the second statement is wrong. It's a China-led initiative, but India is not a part. So here only one is the correct answer. So from this we correct the important topics of the international relation. I'll take COP in my next classes, including every details as well. Next we will be moving on to the report section. We will be discussing the topics from the report section. So consider the following statements about the World Economic Outlook. It is published by the World Economic Forum. It's a semi-annual report which revises projected GDP growth rate for our countries. Now particularly if we need to solve this question by elimination, you have a key term called the GDP growth rate. Now the World Economic Forum does not actually accumulate the analysis of the GDP growth rate, so by which we can actually eliminate the World Economic Forum. Now the World Economic Outlook is actually given out by the IMF and not the World Economic Forum. It is actually a semi-annual report which revises the GDP growth rate. Now before, the IMF has projected India's GDP as 6.1%, but it has actually increased our projection to 6.3%. This is for India. For China, they have actually reduced the GDP growth rate. They have actually reduced the GDP growth rate by minus 0.3% from what they actually had. If they had a GDP growth rate of 7, they actually reduced it by 0.3 to 6.7 or something. So that is what the IMF has recently done, and that is what being published by the World Economic Outlook as well. Now you know the COVID time, it has created a lot of problems for a lot of countries, and India has been financially and economically struggling. So with that also, India has managed to come up and increase our GDP growth rate in the future as well. So that has been actually mentioned in the World Economic Outlook. So from this we have choose the correct statement. The first statement is wrong, only the second is correct here. So if you are looking, it is a semi-annual report, the World Economic Outlook, the navigation global divergence that has been released in October 2023. IMF has revised its projected GDP growth rate for India from 6.1 to about 6.3%. The economics also stated the economics were worse during the COVID time as well. India, which was also one of the worst affected in this, has come up and revised their GDP growth rate as well. So that has been importantly mentioned by the IMF. The World Energy Employment Report is published by which are the following agency. Now it is a key term. There is energy. Energy. If you are going via the key term of employment, you might actually go to International Labour Organization. But you need to focus the other key term here as well, that is the energy. So you can actually eliminate with that. From that we can eliminate the international, with that we can actually eliminate the International Labour Organization as well as the World Economic Forum. Now we will be coming back to International Energy Agency as well as the International Renewable Energy Agency as well. The thing is that such kind of report is, many reports are released by the IEA, that is the International Energy Agency, and or the International Renewable Energy Agency. So if you are looking, we are coming to International Energy Agency and Renewable Energy Agency, but looking onto that, most of the reports are actually released by the IEA. We will be moving on to the International Energy Agency. So that is some of the elimination methods you can actually use towards this. Now if we are looking at what are the major key highlights that has been mentioned in the World Energy Employment Report, is that the International Energy Agency, as released in the 2023 report, has projected that a lot of about 67 million people, the employment within the energy sector has increased by 67 million from about 3.5 million as such. Now more than half of the employment growth over the period was in just 5 sectors. If you are looking at the energy sector, only 5 sectors, we have witnessed a lot of employment generation. In solar, wind, electric vehicles, EV, solar, wind, EVs, we have heat pumps as well as critical mineral mining. So these are the 5 sectors under which there has been a lot of employment within the energy sector. But if you are looking countries like India, the Middle East country like Saudi Arabia, we had employment growth not just in the renewable energy sector, but we had the employment growth in the fossil fuel sector as well. Now this is not applicable in other countries. In other countries there has been an increase in employment in the energy sector, but not in the fossil fuel sector. But in India and Saudi Arabia and such, there has been an increase in employment from both the energy as well as the fossil fuel sectors as well. India and Middle East were the only major regions that seen a growth in the both. Overall, India has the 3rd highest number of workers in the energy sector, as after China and the Asia Pacific. India has the 3rd highest number of workers who are working on the energy sector as well. So our fossil fuel employment has been actually greater than the pre-pandemic level. So all this has been actually mentioned in the article, and China, as I've told you, is the largest has the largest number of people who are working in the energy sector. So all this has been actually mentioned in the World Energy Employment Report of 2023 by International Energy Agency. Moving on, consider the following statements about the emission gap report. It is an annual report published by UNDP. It tracks the gap between the global emission and the current country commitment as per the updated NDC, that National Determined Contributions of India, has committed to reduce the emission intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2047 to about from 2005 levels. So there are basic things which you need to know. This emission gap report is very important. If you didn't know even the other reports as well, there are certain reports which you need to by heart the organization which have released it. One such report is the emission gap report. The thing is, it is not released by UNDP, that is the United Nations Development Program. That is not released by UNDP, but the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, has actually released the emission gap report. It does track the global emission and the current target that has been made by the countries, and also the what are the emissions that has been given out by the countries as well. And another important thing is what are India's NDC targets. This is actually wrong, but as I have told you, the targets you need to by heart what is the targets of India, and in the coming third slide we will be discussing about the targets. But the thing is, the 45% not by 2047 but by 2030. You need to by heart certain factors. This is one of it. You should by heart what is the NDCs and what it is related to it, and what is the update, how much India has actually achieved in this. So all this is very important. We need to choose a number of correct answers. Here only one is the correct answer. The first statement is wrong, the third statement is also wrong. So now let us look into the emission gap report. What are the key highlights mentioned in it as well. So as I have told, the emission gap report is actually given out by the UNEP. Now importantly, we have the COP28 that is going to happen in Dubai. So with this, it's very important that we know this emission gap report becomes very important. There has been certain key highlights has been mentioned in this article. It is found that there has been an increase in emission by about 1.2% from 2021 to 2022. We are supposed to reduce the emission but not increase the emission. What has happened is that we were actually supposed to reduce emissions 8% per year, but we have actually increased our emission to 1.2%. That has been actually mentioned in this report. We also are likely to breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius. Last year, in this year, if we are looking, we had 86 days where we have actually already crossed the temperature threshold. In the coming years, we might actually go beyond 86 days as well. We saw the summer, in September, August, we had deficit of rainfall. We had lot of days which actually crossed the temperature, crossed by 40 degrees Celsius in many parts of India as well. So we are likely to breach the 1.5 degree target as well. Global emission trajectory. The country's current emission pledged to limit the temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius, but likely we will actually reach about 3 degrees Celsius within this century itself. So all this has been actually mentioned in this article, and why there is a requirement to reduce the temperature and as well as take climate change more seriously has been actually mentioned under the emission gap report. If you are actually looking into the national determined contributions that has been made by India, this is based upon the Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement 2015. We are to update our NDCs every 5 years plus. Every 5 years we have to update our NDCs. Earlier, our cumulative electric power production from 33 was actually pledged to 33 to 35% compared to our 2005 level, which has to be updated, which has to be achieved by 2030. All this target are to be achieved by 2030. Now we have actually increased it to about 45%. From 33 to 35%, we have increased to 45%. Also, the additional carbon sink creating, we have not changed this 2.5 to 3%. Also, the electric power installed capacity to reach 45%, we have actually increased it to 50%, and the energy intensity based upon the GDP from 33 to 35% to about 45%. So we have updated from 33 to 45%, from 40 to 50% of the renewable electric power installed, as well as the additional carbon sink. So all these are the important national determined contributions that has been mentioned by India. NDC is given out by as per the Paris Agreement. So it's very important, you have to by heart this very fact. You might get this question based upon this. There may be the facts might be changed and given to you. You might so it's very important you have by heart in this area. Moving on. The Broken Records report is published by which of the following agency? We have International Labour Organization, World Meteorological Organization, United Nations and World Bank. All these are 4 prestigious organizations. The Broken Record. If you are looking by the world name, IMF, ILO, World Meteorological Organization, so all these can be actually ruled out. Then World Bank, you might actually associate it with poverty, but it's not World Bank, but the Broken Report is actually given out by the United Nations and it is actually based upon the climate change. So as you can see here, the Broken Records is actually given out by United Nations. So let us see what United Nations mentioned in this Broken Records report. They were also talking about the climate change and how our temperature will be overshoot to about 2.5 to 2.9 degrees Celsius within the century as well. They also mentioned about the number of days where the temperature threshold has been actually increased, like about 86 days has been also mentioned here. The United Nations are also talking about bringing more changes in the climate change, bringing more agreements and more countries together so that the climate change can be stopped and better management, the mitigation, adaptation practice can be actually taken up as well. So all these are mentioned by the United Nations in their Broken Records. Consider the following statement about the OECD, that is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Recently, the OECD released a report of the climate change. So, because of which I am actually putting a question upon OECD. It is an official permanent observer of the United Nations and is referred to as a think tank or as a monitoring group. India is a member of OECD. Which of the following is or are correct here? So if you are looking at OECD, as I have told you, these are a group of 38 countries which are actually, they have a lot of production and they actually undergo 80% of the, they are a group of 38 nations and they control 80% of the world trade as well. But India, as you can see here, is actually not a member. We have the some American, North America completely, South America certain states, we have the European Union, we have Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea and such, which are members of the OECD, but India is not a member of this OECD. And this OECD has actually a permanent membership in the United Nations. They actually give out the Human Development Index as well. With a very high, they have a high Human Development Index as well. It was founded in 1961 and has their headquarters in France. India is actually not a member of this OECD. So with that, we can actually eliminate the second statement, and here only first statement is actually correct, the second statement is actually wrong. The third statement is actually, first statement, second is wrong only, one is correct here. Okay, we have only one statement that is actually correct here. Now, as I have told you, the OECD report also talks about the climate change, but basically the OECD report here talks about the funding. We have actually pledged that we will be actually getting more than $100 billion per year. But the OECD report projects tells us that we are not even close to achieve this $100 billion per year. Even in 2021, we have mobilized only $89.6 million from the projected $100 billion. And also the finance for the adaptation has actually decreased by 14% in 2021. So all this has been actually mentioned by the OECD report. The report also glimpses the climate final perspective of rich countries such as our USA, France, Germany, Switzerland, Canada as well, which are not giving out the required financing as well. The major problem here is that the rich countries want to give this $100 billion as loans, not grants. But the developing countries and the underdeveloped countries want this amount as grants so that they don't have to pay back this amount to the richer countries. But the richer countries are not actually willing to give this amount back as a grant but as a loan so that they might get the money back. The thing is that if this is actually given out as loans and not as grant, then already these underdeveloped countries are weaker and they have to actually, they are the ones who face the climate change very harshly. They have to pull out a lot of money to actually change adaptation and mitigation process within the climate change. So if this is actually given again as loan, this will actually debt burden, this will actually increase the debt burden of these underdeveloped countries as well. So because of which 2/3 of the public loans are now given as loans. That is one of the disagreements that has been made by the OECD report. Then if you are looking, majority of this fund is actually given out for adaptation. Majority of this is actually given out for adaptation, you can see, than for any kind of mitigation. The mitigation amount is particularly smaller. The amount of mitigation which is given for mitigation is particularly smaller than for adaptation. If you are looking totally, the majority 60% climate finance is given for mitigation, and oh, I'm sorry, this is actually mitigation. Majority is actually given out for mitigation and only smaller for adaptation. Mitigation consists of 60%, whereas for the climate percentage, then 27% for adaptation, and then 13% for cross-cutting. So that is the order: mitigation first, then adaptation, then for cross-cutting. That is how the finance has been given out. But we need a more finance for the adaptation process as well. For mitigation it's okay, but we need to live with the climate change because that is the recent phenomena and that is happening, and we cannot reverse this climate change phenomena. So it's better that we adapt to it than mitigate it. Mitigate is important, we mean mitigate it, but the majority thing we need is an adaptation. But the funds that is actually given for adaptation is pretty much lesser than the mitigation. So that becomes very important. Now, recommendations: by 2025, developing countries are estimated to need close to 1 trillion annually compared to the $100 billion that are provided right now. So with the increased climate change phenomena, the funds that is required by the developed and underdeveloped countries will also increase. From the $100 billion estimated that by 2025, we need about close to $1 trillion annually so that we can actually mitigate it. And then year on year, we will be actually needing about $2.4 trillion each every year. So that has been actually mentioned in the OECD report. Okay, then in our last topic from the report, we have the ILO reports urging countries to strengthen safety net. Recently, the ILO reports has actually come out, which talks that nearly 30 lakh workers globally has actually died due to diseases or accident while they were actually working. About 63% of this death occurs in the Asia Pacific region. 30 lakh people actually have died because of work related and as well as disease given out by the ILO report, and 63% closely is from the Asia Pacific region. And one of the major reasons for this is the long working hours. We have close to about 55 hours or more per week where a single person is actually working. Too much of overwork that increases the tension, BP, pressure and everything will be increased, because of which the person actually dies eventually. So that is how majority of people has died, and you can find from the Asia Pacific region. Now, the long working hours is actually identified as the leading cause of work related deaths, contributing about 7.4 lakh fatalities in actually 2016. The three most hazardous sector which is mentioned is one is mining, quarrying and construction and utilities. So these are the key sectors which are actually mentioned where the number of deaths are higher compared to the other sectors. If you actually see this diagram which is actually given out by the ILO, we can state that long working hours is the major reason. About 7 lakh people die because of the long working hours. Then particularly PM and Qs and injury, asbestos, silica. So the number is actually reducing, but the majority is actually contributed by the long working hours of the people. Now this has been actually given out by the International Labour Organization. These are the 10 such areas where the deaths are highest. Among this is the long working hours. It is not even the chemicals that is causing it. It is the long working hours where the humans are continuously overworked, because of which due to the exhaustion we finally die. So that is actually mentioned by the ILO. Then as per the ILO convention, there is actually about 79 out of the 187 members countries have ratified the International Labour Organization Safety and Health Convention and then ratified. India has not ratified both of these conventions. India might have signed it but not ratified. Ratified means that we have actually given out laws from the parliament. They have ratified within the parliament and given out laws specifically based on this, but India has actually not done that. In the wake of the Uttarakashi tunnel incident, we know 41 workers were trapped there, and because of if it has trapped, it would have led to the death as well. So the thing is that we need a safety net around it. People should be given that, especially in sectors like mining, quarrying and all, the safety net is actually very important as mentioned by the ILO. The report also said that the rate of trachea, bronchus and lung cancers has also been increasing or doubled within the time frame of 2000 and 2016, indicating the health of the workers where they have to maintain a safety net as well. So the report also recommends 5 categories: the fundamental principles and the right as well. There are certain key terms has been mentioned: freedom of association and effective recognition, elimination of all forms of forced labor, abolition of child labor, elimination of discrimination in respect to employment occupation, safe and healthy working environment. So all these has been actually mentioned by the report, 5 categories recommendation that has been given from the report as well. So you have to remember, if there is actually regarding a work, you can mention about in the main sector as well, you can mention about the data that has been actually given out by the ILO as well. So we have reached the end of that. Then we will be moving on to the defense sector, where we have 3 topics.